Amelia's hands trembled as she flipped through the divorce papers. The courtroom had already emptied. Rows of wooden benches sat abandoned beneath the cold lights. The lawyers were gone. The judge was gone. Even the clerk had disappeared behind a side door. Only silence remained, a silence that felt heavier than the divorce itself. For months, Amelia had imagined this moment. She had imagined anger, relief, maybe even satisfaction. Instead, she felt nothing. Nothing except exhaustion. The kind that settles deep inside a person after loving someone for too long and losing them anyway. A loose page slipped from the stack. Amelia bent down automatically, then paused. Something was tucked between the final documents. A folded envelope. Her name written neatly across the front. Amelia Carter. Her stomach tightened. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Ethan's. For a second, she simply stared at it. The envelope looked ordinary, harmless. Yet something about it made her heart beat faster. Across the room, the courtroom clock ticked loudly. Amelia's fingers tightened around the envelope. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Then she opened it. The paper crackled softly beneath her fingers. Her eyes moved to the first line, and her entire body went still. I knew about the affair 3 years ago. The words blurred. Amelia blinked. Read them again. Then again. Her pulse pounded in her ears. No, that wasn't possible. The paper slipped slightly from her fingers. 3 years. 3 entire years. Ethan had known. She swallowed hard. An image flashed through her mind. Ethan sitting alone at their kitchen table. A cold cup of coffee untouched beside him. His eyes fixed on nothing. The night she had accused him of hiding the truth. The night he never defended himself. Another memory followed. Ethan standing in the doorway of their bedroom. Silent. Exhausted. Looking like a man carrying a weight she never bothered to understand. He had known all along. She thought of the night she had screamed at him across their kitchen. How she had called him a liar. How he had said nothing. Just looked at her. He had known even then. The courtroom suddenly felt too small. The clock on the wall kept ticking. She forced herself to keep reading. I knew who was meeting your ex. Amelia stopped reading. Looked up. The courtroom was still empty. Still silent. No one to ask. No one to stop her from finding out. I knew who was paying him. Her fingers stopped moving across the page. I knew who was feeding him information about our marriage. Every sentence felt like another crack spreading through the foundation of her reality. The story she had believed for years was collapsing. Piece by piece. Memory after memory. Argument after argument. The night he forgot their anniversary. She had cried alone in the bathroom. She had decided he simply didn't love her anymore. Now she understood. He had been sitting with a secret so heavy it had swallowed him whole. And she had called it indifference. Then she reached the final paragraph. Everything inside her stopped. The words had been underlined. As if Ethan had known she would need to read them twice. The person who destroyed our marriage was never your ex. Amelia froze. Her heartbeat vanished. Her breathing vanished. Even time seemed to vanish. Then came the final sentence. It was your father. The paper slipped from her hands. A sharp gasp escaped her lips. Her father. The man who had walked her down the aisle. The man who had told her Ethan could never be trusted. The man who had stood beside her during every argument. The man who had comforted her after every fight. Her father. Amelia stared at the letter. Unable to move. Unable to think. Unable to breathe. Because in a single moment, the divorce stopped being the tragedy. The real tragedy was realizing she had spent years blaming the wrong man. And somewhere outside the courthouse, Ethan was already walking away with a broken heart he never deserved. Amelia stared at the letter long after the words stopped making sense. Her father. The accusation echoed endlessly inside her mind. Yet what hurt most wasn't the revelation. It was the memories that suddenly began changing shape. Small moments. Forgotten moments. Moments she had dismissed without a second thought. Now they returned one by one. Sharper. Heavier. Impossible to ignore. A memory surfaced. A rainy evening 3 years earlier. The kind of cold, miserable night that made the city feel gray. Amelia had returned home exhausted after a disastrous day at work. Her shoes were soaked. Her head pounded. She wanted nothing except sleep. The apartment had been quiet. Ethan was sitting at the dining table. Still wearing his jacket. Dinner untouched. A plate waiting across from him. The moment he saw her, concern crossed his face. You haven't eaten. At the time, she barely reacted. She had walked past him without really looking, without noticing the relief in his eyes, without noticing he had been waiting for hours. Now she remembered everything. The way he quietly stood up, the way he reheated the food without being asked, the way he pretended not to notice her bad mood, the way he stayed awake long after midnight while she worked on reports, and the way he smiled when she finally laughed at something trivial. A painful knot formed in her chest. Another memory followed. A winter morning. She had overslept, rushed through the apartment in panic, unable to find her car keys. Minutes later she discovered them neatly placed beside her purse, along with a coffee prepared exactly the way she liked it. At the time she never questioned how it appeared. Now she knew. Ethan had woken up early. Just to make her morning easier. The memories kept coming. Relentless. One after another. Each one revealing a version of Ethan she had never truly seen. Then came her birthday. The birthday she believed he had forgotten. The birthday that started one of their worst arguments. She remembered sitting alone at the restaurant, watching other couples celebrate, checking her phone every few minutes. Her father's voice still echoed clearly in her memory. "He's probably too busy to care." At the time, those words felt true. Now they felt poisonous. Because another memory surfaced. One she had ignored. A bouquet arriving near closing time. White roses. Her favorite flowers. No note. No signature. No explanation. Just flowers. And disappointment. Or so she thought. Now she remembered looking through the restaurant window. A dark figure standing across the street. Motionless. Watching. Waiting. Ethan. Alone beneath the rain. Holding a small gift box in one hand. Never coming inside. Never interrupting. Never defending himself. The realization hit harder than anything written in the letter. Because love had been there. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Not in grand speeches. But quietly. Consistently. Patiently. And she had missed it. Every single time. Amelia closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek. Not because Ethan had stopped loving her, but because she was finally realizing how long he never stopped. And for the first time since signing the divorce papers, a terrifying question entered her mind. What if Ethan had been fighting for their marriage long after she had already given up on him? And what if she had helped destroy the only person who had truly been on her side all along? The next pages of the letter revealed fragments Ethan had never spoken aloud. Not excuses. Not defenses. Evidence. Cold. Precise. Impossible to argue with. Amelia turned the page. A bank transfer. Highlighted. Another page. A date. Circled in red. Another. A phone record. Then another. And another. Her pulse quickened. At first, none of it seemed connected. But the deeper she read, the clearer the pattern became. Someone had been feeding information to her ex-boyfriend. Someone had been creating situations designed to look suspicious. Someone had been quietly turning misunderstandings into disasters. A memory surfaced. A text message she had received late one night. A photo. Blurry. Carefully framed. Just enough to make Ethan look guilty. She remembered the anger. The accusation. The argument that lasted until sunrise. At the time, she never questioned where the photo came from. Now she stared at the matching date in Ethan's records. The same night. The same week. The same setup. Her stomach tightened. Another page. Another memory. A cancelled anniversary trip. A mysterious phone call. A sudden emergency. An argument in the airport parking lot. The trip never happened. The resentment lasted for months. Now she discovered the emergency had been fabricated. Manufactured. Engineered. Amelia's hands trembled. Every page carried another wound. Every document reopened another scar. Every detail revealed something she had failed to see. And one name kept appearing. And again. And again. Her father. Amelia's breathing became shallow. The pages blurred. She blinked rapidly, trying to force reality back into place. But reality refused. Because suddenly she could see the pattern. The warnings. The casual comments. The doubts planted at exactly the right moments. The subtle questions. The strategic concerns. The quiet suggestions that Ethan wasn't being honest. At the time, it felt like protection. A father looking out for his daughter. Now it felt different. Now it looked like someone carefully steering her toward mistrust. A memory struck her unexpectedly. Her father sitting across from her after one particularly ugly argument. Coffee between them. Concern on his face. Or what she thought was concern. You deserve better. At the time, those words comforted her. Now they made her sick. Because she finally understood. Every seed of doubt had grown exactly the way someone intended. The most devastating part wasn't the manipulation. It was Ethan. Ethan had known. For years. Not pieces of it. Not fragments. The whole thing. He had known who was behind it. He had known who was feeding information. He had known who was poisoning their marriage. Yet he never exposed him. Never humiliated him. Never handed Amelia an ultimatum. Never demanded she choose. Instead, he endured it. Argument after argument. Misunderstanding after misunderstanding. Watching the woman he loved drift further away. Still hoping she would eventually see the truth herself. Still believing she would choose him without being forced. Amelia lowered the letter. Her vision blurred with tears. Because for the first time she understood something even more painful than the betrayal. Ethan hadn't lost faith in their marriage. She had. And somehow he had loved her enough to keep fighting for it long after she stopped fighting for him. The more Amelia remembered, the worse it became. The letter rested in her lap. Forgotten. Because the real damage was no longer on the pages. It was inside her memories. One after another, moments she had buried began resurfacing. Not as she remembered them, but as they truly happened. A memory flashed. A late evening in their kitchen. Rain tapping softly against the windows. Ethan standing near the counter. Trying to explain something. Not aggressively. Not defensively. Just trying. Amelia remembered cutting him off before he could finish. She remembered turning away. Crossing her arms. Refusing to look at him. At the time, she felt justified. Now she remembered something else. The look in Ethan's eyes. Not anger. Not frustration. Disappointment. The disappointment of someone realizing he was no longer being heard. Another memory surfaced. A charity gala. Hundreds of guests. Bright lights. Fake smiles. Ethan reaching for her hand beneath the table. A small gesture. Almost invisible. She remembered pulling away. The movement had been subtle. But she saw it differently now. The brief shadow crossing his face. The quiet hurt he immediately tried to hide. Back then she never noticed. Now it felt unbearable. Another memory. Another wound. A Sunday morning. Coffee growing cold between them. Amelia scrolling through messages. Searching for evidence. Searching for reasons to be suspicious. Searching for confirmation. Ethan simply watching her. Silent. Patient. Waiting. Not because he had nothing to say. But because he already knew she wouldn't believe him. The realization hit hard. Because every accusation she made. Every cold shoulder. Every cruel assumption. Had landed directly on him. And again. And again. Yet Ethan never retaliated. Never exposed her father. Never revealed the evidence. Never demanded loyalty. Never forced her to choose. Instead, he carried the burden alone. A memory she hadn't thought about in years suddenly returned. One of their final arguments. The worst one. She remembered raising her voice. Accusing him of dishonesty. Questioning everything. His silence had enraged her. At the time she interpreted it as guilt. Now she finally understood. It wasn't guilt. It was heartbreak. Because Ethan had already realized something she hadn't. The person poisoning their marriage wasn't standing in that room. And exposing the truth would destroy her. So he chose silence. And paid for it with everything. Amelia covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. Because the injustice was no longer abstract. It was personal. Painfully personal. Ethan hadn't simply lost his marriage. He had lost it while protecting the very person responsible for destroying it. And the cruelest part? Amelia had unknowingly helped make it happen. Every doubt she accepted. Every lie she believed. Every moment she chose suspicion over trust. Had pushed him further toward the exit. Until one day there was nothing left to save. For years she believed she was the victim. Now she wasn't sure she deserved that title anymore. And for the first time since opening the letter, Amelia felt something even worse than grief. Guilt. The kind that settles deep inside the soul. The kind that doesn't disappear when the truth finally arrives. Amelia left the courthouse without remembering how she reached her car. The letter remained on the passenger seat. Folded. Silent. Yet heavier than anything she had ever carried. The city stretched before her. Busy. Unchanged. Indifferent. She started driving. No destination. No plan. Just movement. As if staying still would force her to face everything at once. Traffic lights changed. Buildings passed. Minutes disappeared. Then she saw it. A small corner cafe surrounded by glass windows. Ethan used to wait for her there after work. Almost every Friday. Amelia slowed instinctively. A memory surfaced. Rain outside. Crowded tables. Ethan sitting near the window. A book in one hand. A cup of coffee growing cold beside him. Checking the door every few minutes. Waiting. Always waiting. Back then she often arrived late. Sometimes by 20 minutes. Sometimes by an hour. He never complained. Never once. The memory tightened something inside her chest. She drove away. A few blocks later she passed the bookstore. The same bookstore they visited every month. A memory flashed. Ethan standing between shelves. Holding up 2 novels. Pretending to argue over which one she should read first. His smile. His laugh. The way he always let her win. At the time those moments felt ordinary. Now they felt priceless. Another red light. Another memory. The bridge. The old stone bridge overlooking the river. Amelia's hands tightened around the steering wheel. She remembered that night instantly. The city lights reflecting across the water. The cold air. Ethan standing beside her. Nervous. Unusually nervous. His hands buried in his coat pockets. His voice softer than usual. I want to grow old with you. At the time she smiled. Kissed him. Promised she wanted the same thing. Now the memory hurt so badly she could barely breathe. The bridge remained exactly the same. The river remained exactly the same. The city remained exactly the same. Only one thing had changed. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another. For years she believed she had survived a betrayal. Believed she had escaped a marriage built on lies. Believed the divorce had set her free. Now none of those things felt true. Because the loneliness she carried after the divorce suddenly looked different. It wasn't relief. It wasn't freedom. It wasn't closure. It was loss. The loss of a man she never truly understood. A man who had quietly waited. Quietly protected. Quietly endured. Without demanding applause. Without asking for recognition. Without forcing anyone to see his sacrifices. Amelia pulled the car to the side of the road. Her vision blurred. Because for the first time she understood something devastating. Ethan had never been asking her to choose him. He had only been asking her to trust him. And she never did. The realization shattered what remained of her defenses. Because suddenly the divorce no longer felt like the end of a marriage. It felt like the cost of a lie she had believed for far too long. And the deeper she looked into the past, the more impossible it became to ignore one terrifying truth. She wasn't mourning the marriage she lost. She was mourning the future she destroyed. Over the following days, Amelia barely slept. The letter remained beside her bed. Folded. Worn at the edges. Read so many times she could almost recite parts of it from memory. Yet every time she opened it, she discovered something new. Another document. Another receipt. Another piece of a life she never fully understood. One evening, she found a medical invoice buried inside a folder Ethan had left behind. At first, it meant nothing. Then she recognized the name. Her mother. Amelia's heart skipped. She stared at the number. Then at the payment confirmation attached beneath it. Paid in full. Years ago. The date matched a period when her mother had been struggling financially. A period Amelia never knew existed. Her hands trembled. A memory surfaced. Her mother returning home from treatment. Smiling. Relieved. Claiming everything had somehow worked out. At the time, Amelia never questioned it. Now she knew. Ethan had quietly made sure her mother received the care she needed. And he had never mentioned it. Not once. The realization brought a small smile to her lips. Painful. Gone almost immediately. Because the next thought arrived seconds later. She had divorced him. Another night. Another discovery. A security recording. Old footage from years earlier. A financial investigation involving her father. The image quality was poor. The sound barely audible. Yet one detail was impossible to miss. Ethan. Standing between her father and a group of angry investors. Protective. Taking responsibility for mistakes that weren't his. Shielding a man who had spent years destroying his marriage. Amelia stared at the screen in disbelief. But why would he do that? Why would he protect someone who hated him? The answer hurt because she already knew. He wasn't protecting her father. He was protecting her. The cycle continued. Discovery. Discovery. Regret. Discovery. Plus. Days later she opened an old email chain. One attachment caught her attention. A contract. A major business opportunity. International expansion. The kind of deal executives spend entire careers chasing. The final page contained Ethan's response. A polite refusal. The date made her stomach drop. It was the same month Amelia had accepted a position in another city. Another memory surfaced. She remembered complaining that long-distance relationships never worked. She remembered worrying he would eventually leave. She remembered Ethan smiling softly and telling her not to worry. At the time, she believed he was simply being reassuring. Now she understood. He had already made his choice. He had turned down everything. For her. Amelia closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. Then another. Sometimes she smiled, remembering his kindness. Moments later she cried, remembering how she repaid it. The cycle repeated endlessly. Regret. Guilt. Discovery. Plus. And somewhere in the middle of all that pain, something terrifying happened. Amelia realized she was falling in love with Ethan again. Not with the version she remembered. Not with the version she imagined. But with the man he had actually been all along. And that realization hurt more than any lie ever could. Because this time she finally understood his worth. And this time he was gone. Then came the first sign. A mutual friend mentioned Ethan during a casual conversation. Nothing dramatic. Nothing intentional. Just a passing comment. He never left the city. The words hit Amelia like a sudden shock. For a moment she simply stared, unable to speak, unable to process what she had just heard. He was still here, still close, still within reach. For the first time since opening the letter, possibility returned. Fragile, dangerous, but real. Maybe she could explain. Maybe she could apologize. Maybe she could finally tell him the truth. The truth she should have seen years ago. That night Amelia barely slept. She replayed dozens of conversations in her mind. Imagined what she would say. Imagined what he would say. Some versions ended with forgiveness. Others ended with silence. Yet every version contained one thing. The following days passed painfully slowly. Each morning she promised herself she would go. Each morning fear stopped her. Until eventually she ran out of excuses. One gray afternoon she found herself standing outside Ethan's office building. Her heart pounded. Her palms felt cold. For several seconds she remained frozen on the sidewalk, watching employees move in and out through the glass doors. Then she saw him, Ethan, walking across the lobby. The sight alone stole her breath. He looked different. Not because he had changed. Because she had. For years she had looked at him through suspicion. Now she saw him clearly. The quiet confidence. The calm strength. The steadiness she once took for granted. Amelia stepped closer. Her pulse racing faster with every second. As if her heart already knew what was at stake. Then it happened. Ethan looked up. Their eyes met through the glass. Everything stopped. The noise. The traffic. The people moving around them. For a brief moment the years seemed to disappear. The same connection remained. The same familiarity. The same silent understanding. 100 memories passed between them without a single word. Amelia felt it immediately. The warmth. The recognition. The affection that neither of them had fully managed to erase. Hope surged through her chest. Maybe she wasn't too late. Maybe there was still time. Maybe the truth could change everything. For one beautiful second, the future looked different. Then Ethan's expression shifted. Not into anger. Not into hatred. Something worse. Acceptance. The quiet acceptance of a man who had already learned how to live without her. His gaze lingered for another moment. Then he looked away. Calmly. Gently. As if letting go hurt less than holding on. Amelia felt her stomach drop. Ethan turned. Continued walking. And disappeared down the corridor. The lobby swallowed him. The moment vanished. The hope vanished with it. Amelia remained standing outside the glass. Alone. Watching the empty hallway where he had been only seconds earlier. Because for the first time since the divorce, she understood something terrifying. The hardest part wasn't proving she loved him. The hardest part would be convincing him that this time she finally deserved a second chance. The final evidence arrived unexpectedly. 3 days after seeing Ethan at the office. 3 days after watching him walk away. 3 days after realizing hope alone would not change the past. A package appeared at her apartment door. No return address. No note. No explanation. Just a small envelope. Amelia stared at it for several seconds before opening it. Inside was a flash drive. Nothing else. Her pulse quickened. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Half fear, half anticipation. She connected it to her laptop. A single video file appeared. No title, no description, only a date. A date she immediately recognized. Her stomach dropped. It was recorded 6 months before the divorce. Amelia clicked play. The screen flickered. A private office came into view. Her father's office. The camera angle suggested a hidden security recording. The audio crackled briefly. Then voices emerged. One belonged to her father. The other to a man Amelia immediately recognized. Her ex-boyfriend. Her breathing slowed. Every nerve in her body suddenly alert. She listened. At first, the conversation sounded ordinary. Business. Money. Arrangements. Then came the first sentence. The one that made her blood run cold. Keep feeding her the information. Amelia froze. The room seemed to tilt around her. The recording continued. Every lie. Every setup. Every manipulation. One after another. Cold. Deliberate. Planned. There was no misunderstanding. No confusion. No accident. Everything had been intentional. Her father had orchestrated it all. The arguments. The suspicions. The distance. The collapse of her marriage. Tears filled her eyes. Yet somehow the next revelation hurt even more. Because Ethan's name appeared. Again and again. Not as a victim. As an obstacle. Someone her father had been trying to remove from her life. Then came a sentence Amelia would never forget. A sentence spoken by her father himself. He knows. Silence followed. Then laughter. A short laugh. Confident. Dismissive. He won't expose me. Amelia stopped breathing. The recording continued. He would rather lose her than destroy her family. The words shattered something inside her. Because suddenly everything made sense. Ethan had known. Not part of the truth. All of it. The manipulation. The lies. The sabotage. The betrayal. And still he remained silent. Not because he was weak. Not because he was afraid. Because exposing the truth would destroy Amelia's relationship with her family forever. So he carried the burden alone. Year after year. Argument after argument. Watching the woman he loved drift further away. Knowing exactly who was responsible. And choosing her peace over his own happiness. Amelia covered her mouth. A sob escaped before she could stop it. The laptop screen blurred through tears. Because she finally understood. The man she accused of betrayal had sacrificed everything for her happiness. His reputation. His marriage. His future. His chance to defend himself. Everything. And she had rewarded him with divorce papers. The realization was unbearable. Amelia slid to the floor beside the couch. The recording still playing. The voices still echoing. But she barely heard them anymore. Because one terrifying truth consumed every thought. For years she believed Ethan had broken her heart. Now she knew the opposite was true. And for the first time since opening the letter, Amelia truly believed she had lost him forever. Not because he stopped loving her. Because she had given him every reason to stop waiting. The confrontation happened 2 weeks later. Not in a courtroom. Not in a police station. Not behind closed doors. Exactly where her father cared most. In public. The annual Family Foundation Gala occupied the ballroom of one of the city's most prestigious hotels. Crystal chandeliers. Elegant music. Business executives. Investors. Family friends. Politicians. Reporters. People her father had spent decades impressing. People who admired him. Trusted him. Respected him. The perfect audience. Amelia stood near the entrance clutching her phone. Her pulse thundered inside her chest. Across the room, she spotted her father. Confident. Relaxed. Laughing with guests. Completely unaware that everything was about to change. Then she saw Ethan. Standing near one of the large windows overlooking the city. Alone. Distant. The sight nearly broke her resolve. For a moment she wanted to walk to him. To apologize. To explain. To beg. But first the truth had to be seen. By everyone. The event host stepped onto the stage. Applause followed. The evening proceeded normally. Until Amelia walked forward. The microphone trembled slightly in her hand. Conversations faded. Heads turned. Curious eyes followed her movement. Her father smiled at first. Confused. Expecting a speech. A tribute. A family announcement. Then Amelia connected her phone to the ballroom's projection system. The smile vanished. The recording began. Silence spread through the room. At first people listened politely. Then confusion appeared. Then disbelief. Every lie surfaced. Every manipulation. Every calculated move. Every secret arrangement. Every betrayal. The room grew still. No one interrupted. No one defended him. No one moved. Because the truth needed no explanation. It spoke for itself. Amelia watched the color drain from her father's face. For the first time in years, he looked powerless. Not because someone attacked him. Because reality finally caught up to him. The recording ended. The silence that followed felt endless. Then whispers started. Small at first. Then everywhere. People looked at him differently now. Not with admiration. Not with respect. With disappointment. The humiliation wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cruel. It was elegant, final, and impossible to escape. For years he had controlled the narrative. Now the truth controlled him. Amelia slowly turned. Her eyes found Ethan across the ballroom. For a moment neither moved. The room seemed to disappear around them. The years disappeared. The lies disappeared. Only the truth remained. For the first time, everyone finally saw him clearly. Not the villain. Not the betrayer. Not the man who destroyed a marriage. But the man who had sacrificed everything to protect the woman he loved. The man who carried blame that never belonged to him. The man who endured in silence. Emotion tightened Amelia's throat. Words suddenly felt too small. Too late. Too inadequate. So she made a different choice. She crossed the room. One step. Then another. Hundreds of eyes followed her. No hesitation. No uncertainty. No fear. When she finally reached Ethan, tears filled her eyes. Yet she never looked away. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't choosing suspicion. She wasn't choosing fear. She wasn't choosing someone else's version of the truth. She was choosing him. Publicly. Completely. Without hesitation. And for the first time since signing the divorce papers, the entire room knew exactly who had been wrong. And exactly who had been worth fighting for all along. Months later, peace had finally replaced chaos. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way healing usually happens. One ordinary day at a time. The lies were gone. The secrets were gone. The manipulation no longer lingered in every conversation. Yet traces of the past still existed. Sometimes Amelia would wake in the middle of the night. Heart racing. Reliving old memories. Old arguments. Old mistakes. For a moment guilt would return. Then she would feel Ethan's hand resting beside hers. And reality would return with it. One evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, golden light spilled across the terrace of their home. The city stretched beneath them. Quiet. Distant. Peaceful. A gentle breeze moved through the air. Amelia sat beside Ethan beneath the fading sky. No audience. No reporters. No family drama. No enemies. Only quiet. Only honesty. Only them. A small smile touched her lips as she watched the sunset. The same sunset she had seen hundreds of times before. Yet somehow it looked different now. Maybe because for the first time in years she wasn't carrying suspicion. She wasn't carrying resentment. She wasn't carrying someone else's version of the truth. She was simply present. A memory surfaced. The courtroom. The letter. The recording. The night she believed she had lost him forever. The distance that once felt impossible to cross. She glanced toward Ethan. He was reading something on his tablet. Completely focused. Completely calm. The sight warmed her heart. Because even now, after everything, there was something steady about him. Something safe. Something she once mistook for weakness. Now she understood it had always been strength. The strongest kind. The kind that remains gentle even after being hurt. Amelia rested her head against his shoulder. Ethan immediately shifted closer. An unconscious movement. Natural. Familiar. His fingers found hers. Intertwining effortlessly. As though they had always belonged there. For a long moment neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable. Not empty. Not awkward. Comfortable. The kind of silence that only exists between two people who finally understand each other. Below them, city lights slowly began appearing one by one. Tiny stars scattered across the streets. Amelia watched them quietly. Then squeezed Ethan's hand. A small gesture. Yet somehow it carried everything she struggled to say. Gratitude. The second chance. Ethan looked at her. The corners of his mouth lifting slightly. No grand speeches followed. No dramatic declarations. They didn't need them anymore. Because after losing everything, After believing lies, after surviving betrayal, after nearly letting fear destroy something precious, they had finally found the truth. Not just about her father, not just about the marriage, about each other. And that truth had become stronger than every lie that came before it. The last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the horizon. Neither moved, neither let go. Because this time there were no secrets between them. No doubts, no shadows, only trust. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. And this time, neither of them would ever let it go.